Welcome everybody to another episode of Inspire People, Impact Lives. Today I have former UW Badger wide receiver standout Jonathan Orr, and now founder of ATS, Athlete Transition Services. So not only did Jonathan play with UW, as most of you will know and recognize, he was also in the NFL from 2002 to 2005. He was with the Badgers. And then with the Oakland Raiders and Tennessee Titans. But now he serves a much more important role for our youth, for our young adults and athletes coming out of college and the NFL. Jonathan and his team provide workshops and training for student athletes nationwide, covering topics on leadership development, financial literacy, one of my favorite topics, business success, and mental health, which we just keyed on as well. Pre-show. So Jonathan, welcome. Very excited to have you today.
Josh, thank you for having me, man. I'm thrilled to be on.
And you're at home today, I see? Or is that your office?
This is my office. My wife and I, we actually share our office. She's in a different field. She does marriage and family therapy, so we share our office. So I'm in our office space. Yeah.
Well, this is my first podcast recording from my home. So you got my autographed Michael Jordan jersey behind. You got the Miracle on Ice team. Both of those I bought at a charity auction. That's where I get my sports memorabilia. I can give to charity and get some of my favorite stuff in there as well.
Those are some incredible pieces you have, man. What else do you have in your collection?
So next to me we got Melvin Gordon and Monty Ball. You know those two guys.
Yeah.
To the left, we can't see here, is a Tiger Woods piece. On the shelf behind us, you can't really see it, but I got a Jerry Rice autographed Hall of Fame ball, who was my favorite wide receiver. Who was your favorite wide receiver?
Jerry Rice.
Jerry Rice, all right, we got it. We got that in common.
Yeah.
And then just a couple other things. Clinton Dix is signed for me, J.J. Watt. Clinton Dix, I'm on his board, his charitable board, so I've gotten a couple things, got to know him. He's a fine young man. So yeah, and then on that wall, it's all Cubs stuff. All Cubs World Series memorabilia stuff, because I'm a huge fan and was able to be at Game 7 when they won in 2016. So that is my wall of Cubs fame.
Man, you got a little museum there, don't you?
This is my sanctuary in my house that I got to decorate and design. Everything else is my wife. So.
Got you. Good job, man.
Well, thank you. So before we jump in today, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself? And then obviously I told you I wanted to get into a little bit more of a sensitive topic before we got on our main topic. But tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what I didn't cover.
Yeah, man. I'm from Detroit, Michigan originally. I can't remember if you mentioned that or not, but grew up, fell in love with football at a young age, and about the age of 9 years old, man, I set the goal of playing in the NFL like my guy Jerry Rice. Wanted to have a 20-year career like Jerry. It didn't quite end up happening like that, but after high school, went to UW. Loved every moment of it. Played under Barry Alvarez. My senior season was his last year as head coach, and just very appreciative, man, for that opportunity. The relationships that I built at UW. Still have a lot of them to this day, and that's with former student athletes, as well as just some folks that I met that I was in school with. And so love it. I have a family of 5, so my wife and I, we actually met at UW, so we met there, and she's from Chicago, and end up having 3 kids. So we got an 11-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 7-year-old, so 2 girls, and then a boy is 7. And so life is crazy right now, getting ready to homeschool again when school starts here in a couple of weeks, and so yeah, man, which is pretty much everybody's kind of dealing with some of the same things right now as far as quarantining and things like that. But I'm gonna try to make the most of it and see how it goes. So
we're similar. So I got I added one more to the mix than you did, but I have 9753, and the first three are girls, and the third came on the end. So
Wow. Congratulations, man. Are you guys planning on having more, or?
No. I had probably too much information for the audience, but I had a 2-for-1 surgery, hernia surgery, and then the other one that cut me off. So
Got you.
Done.
Got you. That's force plenty.
4 is plenty. We are a busy household, got a couple dogs as well. So we'll hope with 3 of them, I dropped my girls off at school today. We're at a private school, so they're able to attend. But between the dogs and the 3-year-old that's left at home, we'll see if we get interrupted today.
Right. You know what, Josh, I've always heard when you go from 3 kids to 4 kids, it's a game changer. Like, I heard that leap from 3 to 4 is something about it. Would you agree, or was it not?
It's certainly, so I actually think, my wife and I have discussed this, we think 1 to 2 was the hardest.
Okay.
You have all your attention on 1.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden that attention gets divided. I know that some people say 2 to 3 because then you go from man to zone defense. I've heard that. But I feel like after 2, you're adjusting systems. Like, so as long as you can adjust your systems, it's balancing.
Yeah.
From 2 to 4 was fine for us.
Got you. Interesting.
So
Interesting.
I guess everyone has a little different take on that.
Yeah.
So we're going to be jam-packed with information today, so I want the audience to buckle in because we got a lot to cover with Jonathan. But this week, this year in general has been challenging for all of us. We just talked about the quarantine and because of the pandemic, but we've also had a spotlight on race relations. And like I asked you about before the show, I wanted to get your opinion on this because I think it's really important. And this week, just down the road, another young Black man was shot 7 times in the back by a police officer, a white police officer. And I hate that we even have to label, skin color still, but it's still an issue. And I wanted to get your take on this because I would be remiss because it's such a powerful time in our society where this has always been going on, but now we have video and a spotlight on it all. And we're able to visually see how ugly our society truly is. How are you doing with all this right now? As a Black man, as a business owner, as a father, as a leader in your community, how are you doing?
And to be quite honest with you, Josh, it's hard some days, right? Some days it's harder than others. And I'm so glad you mentioned that this is not a new problem. The last few years, because of social media and because of people having access to record incidents like this, has become more, I guess, widely acknowledged. And so, but the problem's been existing for generations. And so, it's frustrating for me. A couple reasons. One, like you mentioned, here we are, it's 2020, and that I still, as a Black man in this country, still have to deal with some of the things that my grandfather had to deal with in Alabama in the 1930s and 40s. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like I was getting ready to go for a run. This was a couple months ago. It was dark, about 9:30 at night. I missed my run. I wanted to get it in. My mom and my wife were almost in tears, begging me not to go for a run. In my neighborhood, where I pay taxes, out of the fear that I might not make it home, right? And that broke my heart, man. Again, because America. I love America, right? And I really believe it's the greatest country on earth. And so we have to figure out a way, in my opinion, to get past these issues, right? To address them. And I think we're in a place now where we're finally willing to do it, right? And by we, I mean like as a whole, right? Like from legislation to folks who might not be in politics but are in power, right? Decision makers. I feel like I've never been as optimistic as I am right now as far as the direction that we're going in, acknowledging it, and then being willing to make the changes that's necessary. So, man, I feel like I said a lot there, but that's kind of where I'm at right now. So.
Oh no, all that you said I think needed to be said. So whether it was a lot or a little, it's good. So I know we could spend the whole hour on this, but what I really want to ask you, because I think it's powerful, is what can people like me, white leaders, people that have some, maybe just a little bit of power. Like you said, politicians have a lot of power. I might just have like a little bit, but I do have a little bit. How can leaders like me influence change and be a positive influence and acknowledge that you have a heavy burden that's showing up? Because I think about, for me, so I think about some of my Black advisors, my African American advisors that are showing up having to essentially put up a facade that they're okay, and I know they're not. And that definitely hurts work productivity. So even if you didn't agree at all, let's say as a white man, you didn't agree with anything that happened on either side, you still have to acknowledge that there's a burden being carried and productivity is being lost. So I guess for me to frame that, I just want to frame that up a bit. How can we help? How can we lead through this turbulent times?
Yeah, and Jess, I always like to, whenever I sort of have these discussions, I always like to, even though it might go without saying, but I always like to make this disclaimer, right? So this is my opinion, right? And so, I'm not speaking for, all Black people or all Black men, and
Absolutely.
So I just always like to say that. And I know you weren't asking me to do that, but I just like to make sure people know that. So from my point of view, were you going to say something?
No, that's perfect. I think that's a great disclaimer, and I probably should have done it myself. So perfect.
No, it's all good, man. So I mentioned I have a few frustrations, right? One is the fact that the problem seems so big, right? Like, we know it's layers to it. We know it's systems that have been oppressing Black people for a while. We know it's all the way down to the core individual level, right? Biases and things like that people have. But when I think about what can we do, right? Or what can I do as an individual? What can you do as an individual? I think if we try to look at it, the whole problem, it can be overwhelming. But I think a great place to start is within our sphere of influence, right? Like, I believe that we all have been given a sphere of influence, right? In the business world, right? Which with your family, your community, on boards we sit in, so on and so forth. And so to just start there, like if I'm a white male and I'm in a position of power within my company, how am I going to use my influence and the opportunity that I have to lead to make sure that that we are true, our hiring practices are truly diverse, right? Like, what am I going to do to make sure that Black people are getting opportunities at the same rate as my white counterparts? You know what I'm saying? Like, will I be a voice when it comes to, when I'm sitting at those tables in those meetings behind those closed doors, and it comes to these issues in the workplace? Will I be an advocate and speak up for Black people, right? Like will I make an impact within my family? Like will I make sure that my kids understand that all men and women and boys and girls are created equal, right? Like, we're all children of God. Well, I make sure that my kids understand that, and when my kids' friends come over, well, as opportunities come, will I have these discussions basically in my sphere of influence? And I think that's the best place to start, right? Like, I'm not a politician, right? I vote. And that's another thing, right? In my sphere of influence, will I vote and put people in office that are going to do right by humanity, right? Like that won't continue to perpetuate the problems that we have. And so I think the best place to start is to really look at where we are, what influence we have, and then to be an advocate and for change in those areas.
That's great. Thank you, Jonathan. And thanks for taking some time on that. And as you talk about the vote thing, make sure that you do your research and pay attention, because I think actions always speak louder than words. My father and grandfather and business coaches have always told me to pay attention to people's actions. So don't pay attention. Politicians are great at words. Make sure that you pay attention to their voting record, that there's certainly some laws that were discriminatory against people of color. It doesn't matter what they say. If they voted for that law, that is an action that speaks louder than their words. So make sure that you're doing your research as you go out to vote this year. That's for everyone. All right, man. Let's get into the good stuff. All of your stuff. You transitioned to the NFL. You got to fulfill your dream, and so I want to ask about that first before we get into the transition services, because you know that even as a 9-year-old, you probably realize 20 years, like Jerry Rice, like that's still 20 years. Like you're going to be, young 40s or whatever, if you got to fulfill that dream even. So you knew that there was going to be a second career beyond that. So there's always going to be a transition. But starting with the NFL, starting with college, how do you feel that college, or UW-Madison maybe even specific or more particular, helped you prepare for the NFL and then beyond? Being a college athlete,
Good
how did that
question.
help you prepare?
Yeah, man. So let me address one thing you just said. So, right, you would think as a 9-year-old, even if I got a chance to play 20 years like Jerry Rice, that at some point along the line, I would have intentionally planned on what I would be doing, but I actually didn't, even though I knew I graduated from UW and things like that, but I had never really intentionally thought about how I would move forward once football was over, even though I knew one day football would be over, right? But I was just so focused. This is what happens with a lot of athletes, where they're so focused on accomplishing this goal and becoming the best athlete they can be, that subconsciously, even sometimes we put everything else on the back burner and until we're done, and then we're sort of faced with this. But to answer your question, man, UW prepared me for the NFL. I mean, obviously, football. Just physically, I felt like I was prepared, man, and playing under Alvarez and running the program the way he ran it, which was very pro-like. Learn everything from discipline to just, the ins and outs of the game and everything like that prepared me. We did not have, now they have a whole department and they have people in place to help with what they call student athlete development, right, and life skills. When I was coming up, when I graduated, I graduated in 06, we didn't have that, right? And so it was sort of football and academics. But as far as having the opportunity to explore your other interests and figure out what major is right for you and just all of those type of things outside of football, outside of academics, that's fairly new. And so I wasn't really prepared in that capacity to really be able to plan for a life after sports. But I'm glad to say that, UW, not just UW, but across the country, programming like that is now more common. And so that's good to see.
That's good. So I asked this of Brandon Williams. I asked this of a couple others. So you achieve your dream of getting to the NFL. What's that feel like, that moment you realized that you made it?
Man, I was at my parents' house, and I was the 6th round draft pick in the 2006 draft. I think 172nd pick overall, and it was a sense of gratification, right, and a sense of like. Also, I was relieved because that draft experience is crazy. We could do a whole show on that, right? Just that draft experience, and I really didn't know. I was hearing everything from potential 2nd, 3rd round to undrafted. So I had no idea like what was going to happen. And so to hear my name called and to see it on the TV, man, it was a proud moment. To be able to share that with my parents, my brothers and friends who I have been rolling with since I was young, man, to be able to share that with the people who've been there since the beginning, man, it was special for all of us to accomplish that dream. So.
That's really cool. I love goal attainment, whether it's you think about a dream or a goal. Like I'm frankly really bad at it, being vulnerable. I hit a goal and I'm always like, what's the next thing? And I don't take that time to celebrate. So I do encourage people, and I'm trying to get better myself at celebrating that moment because I'm never satisfied. But I love hearing about it because I love seeing people hit their goals, accomplish their dreams, setting a big target and working like hell to go get it. So what's one thing about the NFL most people don't realize?
Gosh, man. I think most people don't realize that for the majority of the players, right, it's like it's really season to season. For some guys, it's sort of month to month, right? Like you have the Tom Brady's who have, widely recognized, and those few franchise players, on a team and sort of the big names. But for out of 53-man roster, you figure for 30, 35 of them, it's kind of like any moment now, you could get cut, or you could go, you could get traded or something like that. And so, so a lot of people don't realize that. A lot of people think that when you think of the NFL, you think of those mainstream sort of guys who are you see in the commercials and things like that.
Yeah.
But for most of the players, that's not the case. And for most, it's not a long-term career, right? Like for most, I think the average is now 3.5 years.
3.5.
And so, and so for most, this is a short little stint in the grand scheme of life. And so, so that's something a lot of people don't realize, I think.
Yeah, that's cool. So I want to transition to a lot of your workshops and your work now. I obviously want people we could talk about the NFL, we could talk about UW-Madison, we could talk about the draft all the time, and
yeah,
I would enjoy it. But I know that our audience tunes in for leadership and for business expertise, so I want to get on that. What feelings are student athletes right now, well, whether it's your time or right now, experiencing as they look at transitioning from their sports world to business world?
Man, that's a great question. And it's been research done on this. Our organization just partnered with William James College out of Boston last year and the beginning of this year to conduct a study to really hone in on what athletes are experiencing. And so there's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of feelings of being unprepared, not recognizing the transferable skills that they've acquired from being an athlete and how it now transfers into the business world. A lot don't recognize that, and so there's fear associated a lot of the time. This sort of imposter syndrome, right? Like, yeah, I know I was a beast in soccer, but now how can, am I really going to be able to live up to what I accomplished in soccer? Will I be able to even come close to that now in the business world, right? And so all of those things are common amongst athletes once they find themselves in that place of transitioning. So,
man, I'm glad you mentioned that imposter syndrome. As you said that, I was thinking about myself. I made the conscious decision after my sophomore year to stop playing football at UW Whitewater. I made that decision. I made it for myself, and no one pressured me. It wasn't an injury or what. Like, I chose that, and I went through a little bit of a depression, not like clinical depression, but like I lost my identity. I was known as the football player through high school, and then in college. Like, that was my thing.
Yep.
To that point, so like your name's not in the paper anymore. You're not going to practice anymore. You're not with the boys anymore. Like, you're not in the locker. Like, well, then who am I?
Yeah.
Right. So like, I can imagine as you talked about that, like I'm not alone in having those feelings and thoughts.
Yeah.
And again, I made that choice. Some people it's taken from them.
Yeah.
And that's a whole different, probably a mental thing to go on. So I know we talked before, and I'm not I know mental health is a powerful thing that you guys help with your workshops. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I don't want to make that a loss, and not saying that everyone has mental health issues that make that transition. I'm not trying to insinuate that, but there are some that do. And even if it's just an identity thing, maybe there's some of your workshops that help. Can you speak on that?
Yeah, man. So that identity piece, Josh, is huge. And the athletes that we've been working with, and this is my experience. This is what led to me getting into this work, man. When I was out of the NFL, I struggled for about 2 years, and a huge part of it, sort of the underlying factor in my struggles that manifest in different ways, was this identity thing, right? Like, I had been playing football for as long as I could remember. I was known as that. Now all of a sudden, it's not part of my life anymore. And I felt as though I did not matter anymore. I felt as though I was unimportant. I felt as though I had nothing to offer. True story, Jess. I remember I was driving to my high school. I was probably like 3 months out of the NFL. I'm driving to my high school, which I had done countless times since graduating from there, to talk to, students about college, about success, whatever. As I'm driving to my high school, man, I'm bombarded with these thoughts of nobody's going to want to listen to you anymore. You don't play football. Your NFL career, you were a bust, right? Like you're a failure. All these thoughts, which I had never experienced before. I get to the parking lot, and then I remember the last thought was something like, man, like you have nothing to offer, right? Like you don't play in the NFL anymore. Like nobody's going to want to listen to you. I made a U-turn in the parking lot and proceeded to go back to my parents' home. And that was the first time that I realized, like, man, I have some identity issues. Just because I don't catch a football anymore doesn't mean my self-worth, self-esteem, self-value should be diminished the way it is, man. And that's what really started me on the journey of looking into this work and working with athletes and starting athlete transition services. But you're right, man. It's common. A lot of athletes have identity struggles once they're done playing. You figure a 22-year-old who graduates from college, a lot of cases they've been playing their sports since they've been 4 or 5. It's all it's been what I call their core identity. And so the issue is not that being an athlete is part of your identity, because it is, right? Like we'll always be football players. That's part of our identity. But the issue is when it becomes our core identity, the foundation, the primary way in which we define ourselves. Because the issue with that is if your core identity is based on what you do, right? Like an athlete, even in business, whatever, if that's the primary way you identify yourself, then what happens when you don't do it anymore, right? What happens to your self-worth, self-esteem, self-value, self-respect? It goes away with it. And so we have to make sure, what we try to get athletes to understand is that this is part of who you are. It can be a big part of who you are, but you really have to define yourself in a way that isn't based on your performance, that isn't based on what you do.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. Yeah, so I want to dig a little deeper into some of the service categories that you have. So you have this next season program, right? Tell us about what that is.
Yeah, man, the next season program is a holistic approach in helping athletes to prepare for life after sports. And so in this particular series of workshops, we address identity, which is one of the things we just talked about. We do self-exploration, where, after addressing identity, you understand that you're more than just an athlete, and you understand that your core identity shouldn't be based on athlete. Then, okay, how do we start exploring those other gifts, those other talents that you have, those other reasons you've been put on this earth, the other things you're supposed to be doing? So we help them explore that, tap into those things. So identity, self-exploration. We do career readiness, right? Like understanding what career is right for you. And then we eventually help them to develop a game plan, which is where you put all of these things together and you formulate a plan on how you're going to move forward, after your sport. And then from there, after these educational workshops, we also have career coaches that they can work with to hold them accountable in accomplishing those goals.
When do you like to start? Is it like, okay, I'm graduating, should I hit up Jonathan and his team now, or when is it that you like to start with athletes?
Yep, man. So ideally, we like to start freshman year, and truthfully, the last year and a half, we've even started working with high school student athletes to start getting them thinking about these things now. But on a college level, we like to start right away freshman year, really addressing that identity piece so they can have a good foundation as they go through their college experience. And this stuff is on their mind from the very beginning. So we like to start freshman year.
So do you market yourself to universities, or do you also work with, say, I'm thinking of, like, let's say my kids grow up and they're athletes and they're fortunate enough to play in college, whether that's whether it's rowing, softball, football, whatever it might be, and the university they choose does not have athlete transition services. Can I, the parent, pay for your services to get to my kids?
Absolutely. So 75-80% of our clients, it does come from the athletic department, right? Working with the athletic department, they'll bring us in and work with their student athletes. But a good, the rest are from individuals who hear about our services and seek us out, or or maybe they've been referred from a former athlete who's worked with us, or parents in some cases. So yeah, that is possible.
Well, so what came to mind there, which is cool. Well, I think it's cool anyhow, because you said what your wife does is she's a counselor, right? So how does what your wife does for a living impact some of the services that you've created here? Because it sounds a lot like counseling.
Man, it is, man. So we actually, so we have a team of about 15 folks on our team. Everybody, specializes in different areas. But my wife just officially, and she's technically been behind the scenes the whole time, right? Just helping to develop some of the mental health programming and things like that. But she's recently come on board, and so we partner in to provide transition services for couples. So we just got, we haven't even announced this yet, but I'll share here. We just got a deal done with the NFL Trust to work with their former NFL players and their spouses, man, to help them transition as a couple, to have a successful transition. Because, that transition is not just, if you're married, it's not just you, right? Your wife is going through that with you, or if you're a female athlete, your husband is going through that with you. And so, we'll be working with former NFL players and helping them transition. We also have another joint session that we do together called Winning at Relationships, which is really geared towards helping college athletes. We always hear about what to avoid in relationships, right? Avoid domestic violence and sexual assault, which is all of that is very true. But okay, how do you build a strong, healthy relationship starting off as a college student athlete? Like, what are things that we can do? And so we help college athletes to learn how to build healthy relationships. So,
man, that is so good, because relationships and marriage is hard. And I think a lot of people go into
absolutely.
it with the wrong premise, that it's just like any boyfriend-girlfriend situation and that you can end it. It's not that simple, and especially once kids get involved and all that stuff. But I do want to key in on one thing is you dropped first here. So Ian Rappaport, Adam Schefter, I'm the source of Jonathan Orr dropping this knowledge that this service is now, they're always, fighting over who's the original source on that stuff. So I don't know. All right. How about I want to talk a little bit about the financial literacy piece, because obviously in my world, being a former financial advisor, now leading about 100 financial advisors, like that's key. And what I've seen is there's only 6 states out of 50 that mandate a personal financial program class in high school. So it doesn't matter skin color, it doesn't matter gender, it doesn't, we are not taught this stuff. It doesn't matter if you're an athlete or not. Like, literally only 6 states mandate a course taught in high school. Wisconsin passed a bill last year to be one of them. But I mean, that leaves 44 states that still aren't teaching this. They may have an optional class, but if you give me the senior PE versus a personal finance class, I'm going to take senior PE because that just seems easier. Even though the personal finance is going to be a much more useful class long term. So tell us about what you're doing with financial literacy with these young athletes.
Man, Josh, thanks for sharing that. I had no idea that only 6 states mandate personal finance for high schoolers. That blows my mind, man. So we started off in the transition space, and then the whole goal was eventually to add these different components to what we offer, right? And again, trying to develop the whole person. And so Clemson University was actually the first university that reached out to us back in 2015, I think it was, to develop a financial literacy course. And so what they were experiencing, they were using a bank, a local banker that they had a relationship with, but the banker was coming in and the stuff was going over the student athlete's head. Like, they were working on a budget. I remember they gave me this example. They were working on a budget, and the dude was talking about the gas for his yacht. And the student athletes are looking at him like, what in the world are you talking about? Just couldn't relate. And so we talked to some financial professionals and just developed a very simple personal finance workshop, man, that deals with budgeting, saving, building credit, avoiding unnecessary credit issues in college, just basic things that everybody should know, but unfortunately a lot of folks don't know. And so, it's called money management for student athletes, money management 101 for student athletes. And so it's been pretty successful and as far as the results that student athletes get out of it. And then we just added I think it's called 6448 workshop recently, which deals with more of the long-term financial planning and investments and retirement and things like that. And that's provided for student athletes as well as coaches. So yeah, that's what we're doing.
That's really good. You're doing it the right way too, because you're right. If we don't have the basics of balancing the checkbook, understanding our credit scores and what that means and how that impacts us going forward into life, and budgeting, right? So those things, and keeping debt at bay before you get into like retirement savings, education for kids, all those different tools. If you don't have that basis, it doesn't make sense. And even if I wasn't talking about my yacht, and I'm talking about a Roth IRA, which I don't have a yacht, by the way. But if I was talking about a Roth IRA, a lot of times a Roth IRA is over someone's head if they don't have that basis.
Right,
so
right.
I think that's good. Really, really good. So we have a little bit left, and anything on the health and wellness, anything on the academic success, and actually, let's key in on leadership development, because that's one of my favorite topics. The premise of this podcast is on leadership, interviewing other leaders. So tell us about your leadership development and what you're really pouring into these young athletes.
Yeah, man. So our leadership development workshop is called Athleaders. And so it really focuses on 6 sort of principles for what we call influential leadership. And so, we come from the standpoint of, if you're leading, you're either doing it from a position of authority or a position of influence, right? And so even if you have authority, as you've been given a position, a title, you have authority, people are going to follow you because they have to, right? But people follow leaders with influence because they want to. And so if you have authority, like a team captain, right? You still want to be able to expand your capacity to influence, because again, it's a more effective way to lead. And so we provide student athletes with 6 principles for being an influential leader, as well as, and then that way, even if you don't have authority, you can still lead. We've all been on teams where it wasn't necessarily the team captain or the team leader that was leading, right? It was the person without a title who was able to have that influence because they had integrity, right? Because they had a vision, because they were a good communicator, things like that. And so we try to help athletes to understand that, to expand their leadership through influence.
Or they're led by example.
Yeah, by example. Absolutely.
Right. So I think you're right. So John Maxwell talks about leadership as simply influence, not title. Right. So, and he's the grandfather of leadership teaching. So follow him a lot. His podcast is wonderful as well. But everyone is a leader. I think that's what everyone needs to realize, is that you do not need a title to be a leader. You are a leader. You are a leader of your own life. Like Jonathon Orr, if you were not the owner and founder of ATS, you were still the leader of your family. You're the leader of those children. You're the leader of the household. Sometimes. I can also, Chris, attest to that. Sometimes I'm the leader of the household. But you are a leader in your family. First and foremost, you're the leader of your own life. And then there's other pockets of people. It could be friends groups. It could be a community board. It could be, you do not have to be an owner of a business just to be a leader. You don't have to be a political figure to be a leader. In fact, I get frankly kind of pissed when people talk about political figures being leaders. I was like, no, there are elected officials, and they need to do what we want as a public, and that what they understand that we still don't as a public, as we go back to some of these race relations. The people are the power only when we can come together. The politicians will continue to have the power and continue to, I kind of affectionately dub them the government overlords. They will continue to have the power if we continue to be separated. So if we want to come together and affect change, we have to come together as a people. And so
unity, man.
You could be a community organizer like Barack Obama started off as, and bring people together to affect change. Everyone can lead. And I think that's a big opportunity that people need to realize is you are a leader. And to the extent that you are a giant leader or a little leader is all upon you.
Yeah.
And what you do with your leadership. But I think that's the common premise if I was in class or teaching is to understand over time is that everyone is a leader. You don't look to a leader or look to a position to lead, just like you on a football team. If you've been on that team, like you said, where they didn't have the C on their chest, but you followed that person because they led.
Yep.
So,
Absolutely. Absolutely, John.
So we're running out of time here, and I don't want to miss anything here on the back end here. What advice would you give your 19-year-old self today? From the older, we'll say older Jonathan, wise Jonathan Orr now. What advice would you give your 19-year-old self?
Man, I would give myself the advice of not having tunnel vision, right? Like make sure that while I'm a student athlete here at the University of Wisconsin, make sure that I took advantage of everything it had to offer, right? And not solely focus on football, but build relationships outside of my team, right? Do more of that. I was at a university with people from all over the world, right? Some of the best and brightest. And so take the time and really just develop relationships, to take the time to expand, my mind and explore my other interests outside of football. That's the advice I would have gave myself.
That's really good. That's really good because especially being an athlete at University of Wisconsin, you are in the room with some of the community's best leaders. From business owners to otherwise, like just, especially if you're a football player, you have access to a lot of people that a lot of just traditional students don't have access to. So if you don't leverage that network and leverage the opportunity to meet them, shake hands, and ask them questions, it's a huge miss. So that's great advice. All right, we're going to do that lightning round that I told you about. So one word, so I'm going to throw out to you, and one word answer back, or short phrase I'll allow, but you can't repeat yourself.
All right.
Ready to roll?
Yep.
All right. Stress.
Plenty.
Complacency.
Negative.
Fear.
Overcome.
Grit.
Needed.
I agree. Education.
Paramount.
Mindset.
Positive.
Identity.
Holistic.
That's good based on the conversation today. Success.
Nothing's coming to mind, man. Careful.
All right, my two favorite words as a part of the podcast: inspire.
Responsibility.
Impact.
Change.
Love it. All right, last couple questions. What's your favorite book of all time, or most recently read book that you love to shout out?
Man, I recently read a book called The Spirituality of Gratitude. And it was powerful. It was by a dude, and I think his name was Joshua Kang, I want to say Kang, but it just talked about the unexpected impact of just thankfulness, right? Being thankful every single day, finding something to be thankful for, man. It was very easy and simple read, but it was a good eye opener for just the power of gratitude, man, in our everyday life. Because sometimes, I can complain about things aren't going as fast as I wanted to, or things like that, or I feel like, our company should be somewhere and we're not there yet, but just learning to be thankful and appreciative every single day for something. So
I love it. It is neurologically impossible for your brain to feel grateful and stressed at the same time.
I did not know that.
But yeah, it's impossible to feel blessed and stressed at the same time. So if you focus on gratitude, the anxiety starts to slip away. If you focus on anxiety, the gratitude starts to slip away.
Josh, that's good, man. I did not know that.
So feel too blessed to be stressed. Those sort of
Yeah.
little rhyme to keep up there.
Yeah.
So that's good. All right. So Jonathan, this has been great stuff today. How does our audience, if they want to get in touch with you, follow ATS, how do they go about that?
Yeah, man. You can check us out at atscorp.org. And I didn't mention this earlier, but we're a 501c3. We're a nonprofit organization. So we're always looking for corporate sponsors and donors. So if you're interested in supporting, for example, a high school in your community or a community college in your community with our programming, or you just want to give to this awesome work that we're doing to help prepare athletes for life, you can do so at atscorp.org. You can reach me, or you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at JORR _ATS. Yeah, you can connect with me there.
Perfect. That is awesome. And before we go, I want to shout out for us. We got a couple of quick announcements. We have the Driving Out Childhood Cancer Cup happening September 18th to benefit Alex's Lemonade Stand. We're doing that. The golf is actually sold out, but if we still have whole sponsors and we still have sponsorships that we're taking in, I recently read that 40% of 501c3 charities are going to go bankrupt by the end of this pandemic. So by the end of the year. So I'm trying to keep at least Alex's Lemonade Stand afloat. Northwestern Mutual is. I'm not asking you, I'm telling our audience about it going on. So if anyone wants to personally support Alex's Lemonade Stand, we'd love the support. That'd be awesome. Our goal is to raise $50,000 this year to keep them going for childhood cancer research. I'd like to thank our sponsors real quick that have already sponsored: Hotman Construction, Cressa, Artist REIT, Ideal Builders, and TDS. Thank you so much. Go to www.drivingoutchildhoodcancer.com if you want to sponsor. Or just follow it, or if you want to be involved next year, that's still going to be the website. So, and then secondly, Alex's Lemonade Stand charity dinner happening at Breeze Stevens on September 19th with some celebrity chefs. It's outdoors. Have you been back to see Breeze Stevens Field?
I have not, no.
And they redid it, and they do concerts there now. We have a professional soccer team here in town now that does it. So it's an outdoor. Awesome. So we don't have to wear masks while we're sitting at the tables, but yeah. It's cool. So September 19th for that, if anyone wants to come out. But other than that, Jonathan, thank you so much for pouring into the audience today. I hope you enjoyed this. Everyone gets something from Jonathan here. Check out ATS. This has been awesome. And it's been great to reconnect with you as well.
Likewise, Josh. Thanks so much for having me, man.
You bet.